Okay, we're going to do a couple more things with CSS before we move on to the next topic. So let's download the example that we had last time and see where we were with it, and then we'll make a couple of changes to it. Probably help if I turned on the screen. So I've downloaded the example. It gets put as a zipped file or a compressed file on the desktop. Double click it, extract all, and I can extract it to the desktop. And if you notice, it actually extracts it and puts it in a folder called Thursday. Alright. I'm going to move this to the desktop. Rename it to Tuesday, and then we're ready to go. We can view the pages two different ways. One way would be to double click them, and if we do this, we are viewing it within the web browser. This is how people will view the page when it is put on the internet. The other thing we can do is we can right mouse and say edit with Notepad++. Of course, the other thing you could do is you could start up Notepad++ and open the file that way. That works as well. Alright, or so on. Okay, where we left off last time, we took one of these pages, the FAQ, and we put some CSS associated with it. So if we look at the CSS we associated with it, it was to change some of the things to different colors. We set the body to have a background of black, or background of white, color of black. We changed the H1s and H2s, and we set the footer to these colors. Now, what if we wanted all of our pages to look the same? What if we wanted all of our pages to look the same? We have these three pages here. All right. What if we wanted this page and this page to look the same? Well, one thing we could do, which probably isn't the best idea, but it would work, is we could go and we could copy and paste the style information into all the other files. And that would work, sort of. What's the problem with this, though?
If you ever change it on one page, you have to go back and change it.
Yeah, if you change it on one page, you have to go back and change it on all the other pages. And again, a typical website isn't going to just have 3 pages. It's going to have a bunch of pages. It's going to have way more pages than that. And therefore, you always would run the risk of a couple of things. Of either forgetting to change the page, some of the pages, or incorrectly changing the pages, or something like that. And as a result, you'd have pages that had different styles associated with them. And that's kind of sloppy and unprofessional. All right? So after I've saved everything, these pages now kind of look the same. But sure enough, if I were to go back and change one of these, let's make the background of this a shade of gray. Maybe something like 999999. Anytime where all the numbers are equal, it's a shade of gray. Or really, even if the three pairs of numbers are equal. So like 909090, that's a shade of gray. Because we have the same amount of red, green, and blue. So now we've changed the look of that page, but the other pages haven't changed. So it's much better to take another approach. And that approach involves putting the CSS in a separate file and linking all of your pages to that file. So that's what we're going to do. We're going to take out the CSS from the individual HTML pages and put it in its own file. So I'm going to cut this out. I'm going to go and I'm going to create a new file. I'm going to paste the CSS code in it. And I'm going to get rid of the style tags. You only need the style tag when the CSS code and HTML code are mixed on a page. This file is only CSS code, so we don't need the style tag. We just need the style rules. So what we need to do now is on each of the pages, we need to associate that style file with this web page. And we could do this for 3 pages like we're doing it here. We could do it for 300 pages. It doesn't matter. And the benefit is that you can go and you can make a change to the style file in one place, and all 300 or however many pages you have will get changed. So the way that you associate is with a link tag. Now, don't get confused between this and a hyperlink. This is a different sort of linking of files. Still has an href that points to the name of the file, and we're going to assume it's in the same folder. And it looks like this. Link, href equals style.css, or whatever name we give it. Type equals text/CSS, and rel equals style sheet. So now I'm going to go and I'm going to take this file and I'm going to save it in the same folder, and I'm going to call it style.css. Okay, so now I'm going to take this link tag, and copy it into all of my pages and replace the style code with this link. And now if we do that, all these pages will have the same file, same style, rather. And so anything we change about them, if we make the change to the style file, we'll change all of the files. So if I come in here and I say Well, I don't know. I want the background of this to be red. Then not just one of the pages, but all the pages will get that change. So this is how you should start doing your styles from now on, is putting them in a file and linking them to all of your web pages. One of your goals in designing a website is you want your pages to look consistent. All right? So therefore, this is a good step in doing that, in creating your pages to look consistent. Putting all of your code into an external CSS file and referring to that CSS file. Questions about this? Pardon me?
I'm sorry, I was trying to... Never mind, I can wait till that.
Okay. Did you want to see the code again?
Can you show the style code? Because for some reason, when I tried doing it, it's not showing up.
That's what it looks like in the HTML page.
Do you have to put something in the specific page on the style CSS?
Okay. Yeah, if you can't see, we'll take a look at it in LAM. All right. Now, as I mentioned before, there is a whole bunch of other style rules that we're going to cover. We've just done the very basic ones with changing the background and changing the text color. But I would encourage you to go to a website that has examples and play around with it. W3 Schools being a good place for people to learn some of these basics. So for example, if you want to put a border around something, this will show you how you can put a border around it. So if we want a border around our H1s, for example, we can do this. And now when we look at our page, there's a border around the H1. And it's that way on all of our pages, because again, all those pages are now sharing the CSS code. So use this as an opportunity, use your labs as an opportunity to experiment with this and try changing as many things as you can think of. Because every aspect of the appearance of the page either comes from the browser default or comes from your CSS. So you can override any browser default with your CSS code. Okay? Questions? All right. Next thing I want to cover images. So I'm going to show you simply how to put an image on a web page. That will take just a couple of minutes, because whenever the question is how do we do something, it's usually what is the HTML tag to do it, or what is the CSS to do it. But when we finish that, when we finish the very basics of putting an image on a page, there's a lot of other stuff to go over about images. So we'll go over that as well. So let's think of something to go on our Dungeons and Dragons page. Let's Google Dungeons and Dragons, and let's look for images, and let's look for a cool image. Let's go with this one. I don't know why I like that one. Well, there's a dragon, and it looks like he's standing in a dungeon. So we'll go with this one. I'm going to right mouse and save it. I'm actually going to go to the website. I'm going to right mouse, and I'm going to save it.
That's saving the whole web page, not that image.
Thank you.
If you go back to Google,
Yeah,
click
just open
visit.
the image in new tab instead of open up the link to the site.
Open image in new tab, yeah.
Thank you. I'm going to put it in the Tuesday folder, because remember, as of now, we're putting everything in one folder. All right. Now I'm going to go to this page because I want to use this as a reference of where we got the image from. So I have this image here. And I'm going to rename it to dd.jpg. And I'm going to put it on my index page. So I could put it wherever I want to. Let's put it here. Now, what is the tag for an image? It's the IMG tag. All right. So the IMG puts the tag for the image there. Now, just like with links, we had to specify an additional attribute. It wasn't enough to say, well, we have a link. A link to what? Well, we have to specify what page we're linking to. It's the exact same thing with an image. There's literally billions of images on the web. We have to specify which image we want to show. And we do that in a very similar way to we do with our links. If it's an image that's on our site and it's in the same folder as the rest of the thing, the rest of the files, all we have to do is put the file name. And we do that by saying src equals the name of the file, the full name of the file, including the file extension. All right. Now, some of you that use your laptops, make sure your laptops are showing the full file name, including the file extension. Because without that, you can get into a little bit of trouble. All right, and it can cause a little bit of confusion. Every file has two parts to its name. It's almost like you could think of it as the first name and last name. Right? There's the file name, which is the first part of it. Then there's the second part, which is called the extension. And the extension says what kind of file you have. So if I look here in Windows Explorer, all right, notice it shows the full file name, dice.html, dd.jpg, faq.html, and so on. All right? If it's not showing the extension, go to View in Windows Explorer and make sure that file extensions are checked. Because at a glance, you can't tell exactly what kind of file that is. That could be, we know it's a JPEG file, but JPEG files can have different extensions. JPEG files can be .jpg or JPEG, or even .jpe. So therefore, we want to get the name of the extension to know that the complete name of this file is dd.jpg. And it's spelled out, JPEG. So that's what we're going to use exactly there. All right? So one of the attributes that an image has is the source attribute. That says the file that is going to be used for the image. And again, if it's in the same folder as the rest of your stuff, you just put in the name of the image. There's a second attribute, though, that we have, and we'll introduce it now, and we'll talk more about it later. And that is an alt attribute. The alt attribute is alternative text. And it is typically used by people that are accessing your website using assistive technology, such as people that use a screen reader. All right? If you are visually impaired, if you're blind or have really poor vision, there is software that actually narrates the screen to you. It reads the screen. It reads the words on the screen to you. Well, when it comes to an image, what does it say? Well, it will read whatever you have put in the alt text tag. And in that way, the person at least has an idea of what is being shown in the image. So I can say a knight fighting a dragon. So an image is always going to have two attributes. The source that says what file you're displaying there, and an alt text attribute that describes what is showed in the image so that people that use a screen reader get at least a sense of what's there. Yes?
You are posting this after you're done?
Yes.
Okay.
Yep. So let's look at this. And there we go. There's the page with our image on it. All right. Now, a couple things about this. The image tag really doesn't have to have a start and end image tag. You could do this if you wanted to. Have the start and image tag like that. Or you could do this. That's sort of a shorthand to say that this is a start and end tag all rolled into one. Or you can just skip the ending tag for image. So images are sort of the rare tag that really don't require an ending tag. I usually do this just to make sure that all my start tags have ending tags. And that way, that indicates that that's a starting and ending tag all in one. Questions about this? Now, I just went out to some website and downloaded this picture and used it on my web page. That is copyright infringement, I think I heard someone say. It is. The reason that I can get away with it and that we don't have the FBI breaking in and hauling me away in handcuffs is because this is an educational context. So the rules for copyright are slightly more flexible for educational context than they are for personal or commercial. So for example, if I had a Dungeons and Dragons club and I was if I was making a website for that club, I still would not legally be allowed to use that image. But because I'm teaching a class, I'm legally allowed to use that image, provided I give credit to where I got the image from. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to put a little note on the bottom of the page, maybe in the footer, that says image is from, and I'll create a link to it. This is just like doing a footnote in a paper that you write, or something like that. All right? So I've included a link on the bottom of my page that says, hey, this is where I've gotten the image. So now, everything is legal. I'm off the hook. And I will be here on class on Thursday and not rotting away in a federal penitentiary for copyright infringement. Yes?
This is what they call fair use principle?
It's called fair use, right. Copyright law can be a little tricky. What I teach in this class is sort of going on the straight and narrow, like following it to the letter, all right, and not trying to interpret it in a way that benefits, me. All right. I actually have posted in week 1 some information about this. And for this class, we're primarily concerned with images, because that's mostly what you're going to be using. But for other media, it's relevant as well. And if you look under modules in the first week, you'll see a fair use guide handout. Original material must be lawfully acquired. These guidelines are for educational purposes only. Limits. For illustrations and photos, no more than 5 for an artist. So even in an educational context, I can't go and use 1 million images from the same place. I can use up to 5. There are and attribution. You have to give credit. If, for example, you used a video clip, all right, you could use up to 10% of the clip or 3 minutes, whichever was shorter, all right. So you could, if you wanted to on your web page, have a video clip from a movie, but it would have to be either 3 minutes or 10% of the length of the movie, whichever one is smaller. Likewise with music, 10% or up to 30 seconds. So you could put a 30-second sample or 10% of the sample of music and still be allowable under fair use for education. Yes?
Is that how they get away with ringtones from like movies shows and stuff?
Ringtone, something like that would absolutely need to be licensed. If it's not licensed, it's illegal, and they might be getting away with it, but strictly speaking, it is illegal. So,
It's only a 10-second clip, and they're not charging for it.
doesn't matter if you charge for it or not. Yep. The other interesting thing is what does it take to, when do you, or how does a person get copyright for a picture that they take? Do you have to apply to have an image copyrighted? No. If you take an image, you own the copyright to it. All right? Yes.
So I have a question. So you just Googled in that picture, right?
Uh-huh.
And then you saved it?
Yes.
Okay, and then that's how you did the IMG.
Yes.
Why the DD? Is that what you named it?
That's what long.
Okay.
And I was lazy, and I didn't want to type in the full image name, so I just renamed it to DD for Dungeons and Dragons.
Okay, that helps.
Okay. So, if you find a picture on a website, assume that it is copyrighted. Assume that it is copyrighted, and assume that the owner of the website owns the copyright to it. All right? Now, is every picture copyrighted? Well, no. There's a couple of exceptions to copyright law besides educational. First of all, there are things that are in the public domain. What does it mean to be in the public domain? Yes?
That means it's available for anyone to use.
It's available for anyone to use. How does something get put in the public domain? Yes?
Doesn't it get put there after a certain amount of years?
It gets put there after a certain number of years. So if you found an old photograph from the 1800s, that more than likely is in the public domain. How else can it be put in the public domain?
Whoever takes the picture can put it into the public.
Yeah, whoever takes the picture can just declare and say, this picture is in the public domain. Anyone can use it. In other words, what they're doing is they're giving up their copyright to it. They're saying, yes, I own the copyright to this, but because I'm a good person or whatever, everyone can use this. So things that are in the public domain are one way that you can do it. And let's go and let's Google some public domain images. These are all pictures that are in the public domain, apparently. The government supplies a lot of stuff. For example, I believe, if I'm not mistaken, any photo that NASA takes is in the public domain. And the Library of Congress has images that can be used that are in the public domain. Yes?
The most famous one I can think of is that old Times photographer shot at the end of World War II in New York with the sailor
Okay.
dipping the girl
Right.
prisoner because he got home.
Right. That's a very famous one. The ones I remember too is like there are some pictures, photographs of President Lincoln, like when photography was first being invented, and those are old enough that they are in the public domain. There's another way that you can use photos that someone else owns a copyright, and that is what's called Creative Commons. Does anyone know what Creative Commons is?
It's like a license that's sort of open to use as long as you don't use it under certain contexts.
Exactly. Creative Commons is where the owner of the copyright publicly declares the conditions by which you can use this for free. For example, I could say that I've taken this photo and it's licensed for anyone to use for non-commercial reasons. So, if I had a private Dungeons and Dragons club that wasn't a money-earning proposition, all right, I could use a photo. Or a scout troop developing a website could use a photo. A charity, a nonprofit, could use the photo. All right? But a commercial entity, in other words, a business, would not be allowed to. Now, you can set any number of conditions. You can allow commercial entities to use a Creative Commons picture if you want. All right? You can also limit if people are allowed to alter the image. All right? So let's say you have a nice picture of the Grand Canyon that you've taken. You could say it's available under Creative Commons, but no one can alter it. So in other words, someone couldn't Photoshop Godzilla into the middle of the Grand Canyon or something like that. All right? Or you could say, yeah, people want to alter it, they're welcome to. Now, how do you find that? Well, if you do a search for images, if we want to do a search, let's say we want to do a search for winter images. Under here, under usage rights, I can say, just show me all winter images, regardless of the copyright. Show me the ones that are free to use or share. Show me the ones that are free to use or share even commercially. Free to use or share or modify. Free to use, share, or modify even commercially. So the further down that you get, the less restrictive the license is. So if I had a business, if I had a ski shop, and I wanted my website to have a nice picture of a winter scene on it, and I wanted to alter it to put my logo on it and maybe some text or something, I could search for things that are free to use, share, or modify, even commercially, and I would get a list of these images. Now, you could pick whichever image that you want. You could save it. And the only thing is that you would need to give credit where you got it from. So just because it's used, just because it's licensed under a Creative Commons license, doesn't mean that you can use it without giving credit. So pretty much whenever you use an image on your pages, put where you got it from. Even if you took it, to be safe, put a note on the bottom saying, this is from my photo collection, I took this photo, or something like that. Just so that I know that you understand the use of copyright and you're not violating the copyright. Any questions about this? Now, let's say I saved this image, which I think I did. Yeah, here it is. And I'm going to put it, again, I'm going to rename it just to winter. And let's say I put it on my index page. and I will put the credit on the bottom of the page. Now, when I look at this, when I look at my page, image is pretty big. All right? So I might want to make that image smaller. All right? Now you can do this through any number of image editing tools. Yes?
Can you go back?
To the code?
Yeah, thank you.
And then the actual image tag is up here. Whoops.
No, the other one where
This
the
one?
image is from.
Yeah, image from. Yeah, I just created a link. Now, if I'm going to go in and edit an image, I want to make sure I have a backup copy of that image. All right? That's really important. Because if I edit the image and save it, especially if I make the image smaller, then I decide, no, I don't like it that small, I want it back closer to its original size. If you make an image smaller, you have forever reduced the quality of that image. And there's nothing you can do to get it back. All right? Unless you have a backup. So, I can use any number of different software editing tools to edit this. I'm going to make a backup of this image. I'm going to put it on the desktop. So if I go in here and I edit with Paint 3D, which is like the simplest, most straightforward photo editing software, is on all versions of Windows.
Regular paint still exists too, you just can't right click on it to get to it.
Okay. Yeah, let me...
Can't you just use blanks or
I could use a lot of things. I just wanted to use the simplest one I can find. Let's find Paint. Yeah, there we go. So I bring this over. All right. If I go in here and resize this, and I resize it by percentage. Let's say I make it 10% of its size. It makes a very small picture, and then I save it. Now if I view it on my web page, it's a lot smaller. I look and say, oh, that's way too small. Let me make it bigger. If I go into Paint again, or any other photo editing app, and I try to make it bigger,
It's under image.
thank you. Let's make it 900% can only make it 500. Notice what we got. We got a blurry image. All right? Why is that? Because when we make an image smaller, a JPEG image smaller, we lose information. And therefore, if we try to make it bigger again, that information is lost forever, and we can never get it back. So, the bottom line is, always before you edit an image, keep a copy of the original. That way, if something goes wrong in your editing, especially if you make it smaller, but there's other cases too, if you make a mistake editing it or whatever, it's nice to have a backup of it that you can go back to. Okay, questions about this? We'll pick up next time on other aspects of images, how they can be used on web pages. We'll see you over in lab.